The fluorescent lights above my hospital bed buzzed with that familiar, sterile hum that seems to follow you into your dreams. I'd been staring at them for what felt like hours, though the clock on the wall told me it was only 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. The same Tuesday that started like any other, with me watering my tomatoes in the backyard of my small house in Cedar Falls, Iowa, and ended with me flat on my back in the ICU with what the doctors called a significant cardiac event. Significant. That's a word that sounds so clinical when a 22-year-old resident with kind eyes tells you that your heart decided to throw in the towel at 73. I was alone when it happened. The kind of alone that settles into your bones when you've outlived your husband by 12 years and your only daughter lives 3 states away, too busy with her own life to call more than once a month. But I wasn't thinking about being alone then. I was thinking about my tomatoes, and how they'd need watering, and who was going to feed Mrs. Patterson's cat since I'd promised to look after Whiskers while she visited her sister in Florida. The heart monitor beside me beeped steadily, a metronome keeping time with what was left of my life. Dr. Martinez had been gentle but clear during his morning rounds. The damage was extensive, and at my age, with my other health conditions, the prognosis wasn't what anyone wanted to hear. 6 months, maybe a year if I was lucky. The kind of news that makes you suddenly aware of every breath, every heartbeat, every moment you'd taken for granted. I was still processing this information, still trying to figure out how to call my daughter Jennifer in Phoenix and tell her that her mother was dying, when I heard a commotion in the hallway. Raised voices, the squeak of sneakers on linoleum, and then my door burst open. Grandma. My heart, damaged as it was, somehow found the strength to leap at the sound of that voice. Tyler stood in the doorway, his sandy brown hair disheveled, his Georgetown University sweatshirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. His green eyes, so much like his grandfather's, were wide with concern and something else I couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe. Or determination. Tyler, sweetheart. My voice came out as barely more than a whisper, but he heard me. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and was beside my bed, his hand finding mine with the same gentle touch he'd had since he was small. Mom called me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She said it was bad. I squeezed his hand as tightly as I could manage. Tyler was 18 now, a freshman at Georgetown studying pre-med, following in his grandfather's footsteps. The last time I'd seen him was at Christmas, when he'd driven up from Washington, D.C. instead of flying home to Phoenix like his mother expected. He'd spent 3 days with me, helping me reorganize the garage and listening to my stories about his grandfather's days as a small-town doctor. She's right, honey. It is bad. I wouldn't lie to him. I'd never lied to Tyler, not even when he was small and the truth was harder than fiction. His jaw tightened, and I saw that stubborn streak that had gotten him through so much. What do the doctors say? They say I should get my affairs in order. The words tasted bitter, but they needed to be said. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of my hand. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears, but his voice was steady. Mom's flying in tomorrow. She wanted me to go back to school, said there was nothing I could do here. Maybe she's right, sweetheart. You have classes, your whole life ahead of you. No. The word came out sharp, definitive. I'm not going anywhere. Before I could protest, the door opened again, and a nurse appeared. Nancy, according to her badge, a woman about my daughter's age with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor that comes from years of dealing with families in crisis. I'm sorry, but visiting hours are ending soon, she said gently. You'll need to. I'm staying, Tyler said, not taking his eyes off me. Nancy looked between us, clearly trying to assess the situation. I'm afraid overnight visits aren't typically allowed unless. She raised me. Tyler's voice was quiet but firm. When my parents got divorced, when my dad disappeared, when my mom was working 3 jobs just to keep us afloat, my grandmother took me in. She taught me to ride a bike, helped me with my homework, drove me to every soccer game and school play. She's the reason I'm in college, the reason I want to be a doctor. She raised me, and I'm staying. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Nancy looked at me, then at Tyler, then at the chart in her hands. "Let me talk to the charge nurse," she said finally. "Maybe we can work something out." After she left, Tyler settled into the vinyl chair beside my bed, the same ugly green chair that had probably been there since the hospital opened. He pulled out his phone and started typing. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Emailing my professors. Telling them I won't be in class for a while." "Tyler, you can't." "I can, and I am." He looked at me with those determined green eyes. "You sat beside my bed when I had pneumonia in 3rd grade. You held my hand through every nightmare after Dad left. You drove 4 hours each way every weekend when I was playing high school soccer because Mom couldn't get time off work. You think I'm going to leave you alone now?" The tears I'd been holding back finally came, not from sadness but from a love so overwhelming it hurt more than my damaged heart. This boy, this young man who had every reason to be bitter about the hand life had dealt him, was choosing love over convenience, family over obligation. "The chair doesn't look very comfortable," I managed to say through my tears. Tyler grinned, and for a moment he looked like the 10-year-old who used to help me bake cookies every Sunday. "I've slept in worse places. Remember that camping trip when the tent leaked?" I laughed, "Despite everything. You complained for hours about the wet sleeping bag." "I was 12. I'm tougher now." Nancy returned with a small pillow and a thin blanket. "The charge nurse said we can make an exception," she said quietly. "But you'll need to stay out of the way during shift changes and procedures." Tyler stood up and hugged her. Actually hugged her, this stranger who had just given him permission to turn his life upside down for me. "Thank you," he said. "You have no idea what this means." But I think she did. I could see it in her eyes, the recognition of something rare and precious in a world that often seemed to be falling apart. Love. Pure, uncomplicated, unwavering love. As the evening settled around us and the hospital grew quieter, Tyler pulled the chair closer to my bed and settled in with a textbook. "What are you studying?" I asked. "Anatomy. Seems appropriate." He looked up at me with a small smile. "Want me to read to you? I bet you'd love to hear about the cardiovascular system." I laughed, a real laugh that felt good in my chest. "Maybe later. Right now, I just want to look at you." He closed the book and took my hand again. "I'm not going anywhere, Grandma. Whatever happens, you won't be alone." And as I drifted off to sleep to the sound of his steady breathing in that uncomfortable chair, I realized that maybe the doctors were wrong about one thing. Maybe I was the lucky one after all. I woke up to the sound of Tyler's voice, low and tense, drifting from the hallway outside my room. The morning light filtering through the hospital blinds told me it was early, probably around 7. My grandson was trying to be quiet, but 18 years of knowing him had taught me to recognize the particular strain in his voice when he was trying to hold his ground against his mother. "No, Mom, I'm not being dramatic. Yes, I understand you're worried about my education. She raised me when you couldn't, and I'm not abandoning her now." I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, not wanting to interrupt what was clearly a difficult conversation. Through the partially open door, I could see Tyler pacing in the hallway, his free hand running through his hair the way he'd done since he was little whenever he was frustrated. "Because she needs someone here who actually cares about her as a person, not just as an obligation." "No, that's not what I meant, Mom, please, just listen." The pain in his voice made my heart ache worse than any medication could fix. I'd always tried to stay out of the complicated relationship between Tyler and Jennifer, but lying here, listening to him defend his choice to stay with me, I realized how much my interference might have cost them both. Dr. Martinez chose that moment to appear for his morning rounds, clipboard in hand and that same gentle expression he'd worn yesterday when he delivered the news that changed everything. He glanced toward the hallway where Tyler was still arguing with his mother, then looked at me with raised eyebrows. "Your grandson?" he asked quietly. "Tyler. He's refusing to leave." Dr. Martinez nodded, studying my chart. "How are you feeling this morning, Mrs. Thompson?" "Like I got hit by a truck," I said honestly. "But better somehow. Having him here Family can be powerful medicine, he said, checking the monitors beside my bed. Your vitals are actually more stable than they were yesterday. Sometimes the emotional support can make a real difference in recovery, even when the prognosis is challenging. Tyler appeared in the doorway, his phone call apparently finished, though the tension in his shoulders suggested it hadn't gone well. Sorry, he said to Dr. Martinez. I was just taking care of your grandmother, the doctor finished with a small smile. It's admirable. Most young people your age have other priorities. She is my priority, Tyler said simply, settling back into his chair. I noticed he'd managed to find a coffee somewhere, and there was a paper bag that smelled like breakfast sandwiches on the windowsill. Dr. Martinez spent the next few minutes explaining my treatment plan, the medications they were adjusting, and what we could expect in the coming days. Tyler listened intently, asking the kind of detailed questions that reminded me why he'd been accepted to Georgetown Pre-Med in the first place. The next few days are critical, Dr. Martinez concluded. We're doing everything we can to stabilize her condition, but given the extent of the damage. I understand, Tyler said quietly. That's why I'm staying. After the doctor left, Tyler unpacked the breakfast sandwiches and pulled his chair close to my bed. Egg and cheese, he said, unwrapping one and holding it where I could smell it. From that little place on 5th Street that you always liked. You drove across town for breakfast sandwiches? I wanted to get you something real, not hospital food. He helped me sit up a little straighter. Can you manage a few bites? The sandwich tasted like comfort, like Saturday mornings when Tyler was in high school and would stop by before his part-time job at the hardware store. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching the morning bustle of the hospital through my window. Your mother's upset, I said finally. Tyler's jaw tightened. She'll get over it. Tyler. She abandoned me when I was 8, Grandma. You took me in, raised me, loved me when she was too busy trying to find herself or whatever it was she was doing. His voice was bitter in a way I rarely heard from him. I'm not abandoning you. She was 26 and scared. Being a single mother isn't easy. Being an 8-year-old whose mother drops him off at his grandmother's house and disappears for months at a time isn't easy either. He set down his sandwich and looked at me with those earnest green eyes. I'm grateful she was scared, Grandma, because it meant I got to grow up with you. My throat tightened with emotion. She's flying in today. She's worried about you missing school. Let her worry. I've already talked to my professors, arranged to do my coursework remotely for a while. It's 2024, everything's online anyway. And if this takes longer than a while? Tyler was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the Iowa landscape beyond the hospital parking lot. Then it takes longer. Some things are more important than a semester of college. I reached for his hand. You're throwing away your future. No, he said firmly. I'm honoring my past. There's a difference. Around noon, the drama I'd been dreading finally arrived in the form of my daughter Jennifer bursting through my hospital room door like a woman on a mission. She looked exactly like she had at 18, determined, slightly frantic, and ready for a fight. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and she was wearing the kind of expensive business suit that screamed Phoenix real estate success. Tyler James Morrison, what do you think you're doing? She demanded, not even bothering to acknowledge my presence in the bed. Tyler stood up slowly, and I was struck by how much taller he was than his mother now, how much more composed. Hello, Mom. Nice to see you too. Don't get smart with me. You're supposed to be in class, not playing nursemaid. Jennifer. My voice was sharper than I intended, but the way she was talking to Tyler made my protective instincts flare. He's not playing anything. He's being a loving grandson. She turned to me then, and I saw the fear behind her anger. Fear of loss, fear of being the bad guy, fear of confronting the complicated history between all of us. Mom, he's 18. He has his whole life ahead of him. You can't let him throw it away because I'm dying. I finished for her. The word isn't going to hurt me, Jennifer. I'm already living it. Tyler moved to stand beside my bed, his hand finding mine. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing to be here for the person who was always there for me. She's my mother. Jennifer exploded. I should be the one. Where were you last Tuesday when she had the heart attack? Tyler's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. Where were you the last time she was sick? Where were you for the last 10 years while she was getting older and more fragile? I was building a life, providing for my family. She is your family. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the pain on both their faces, years of hurt and misunderstanding and love that had gotten twisted into something neither of them knew how to untangle. Jennifer, I said quietly. Sit down. Please. She remained standing, but I could see her walls starting to crumble. Mom, I can't lose you. And I can't let Tyler ruin his future because of some misplaced sense of obligation. It's not obligation, Tyler said simply. It's love. And something in the way he said it, so matter-of-fact and pure, finally broke through Jennifer's defenses. She sank into the second visitor chair, the one the nurses had brought in when they realized Tyler wasn't leaving, and put her head in her hands. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to watch you die, Mom. I don't know how to be the daughter you deserve. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the successful real estate agent or the woman who'd made choices I didn't always understand, but the scared little girl who'd cried for hours when her goldfish died, who'd brought me dandelions from the yard as if they were roses. Come here, I said softly. She looked up, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in years, she didn't hesitate. She came to my bedside, and I pulled her down into a hug that smelled like her expensive perfume and tasted like tears and forgiveness. You don't have to be perfect, I whispered into her hair. You just have to be here. Tyler quietly moved his chair to make room, and the three of us sat together in a way we hadn't in years. Outside, the Iowa afternoon was turning golden, and inside, something that had been broken for a long time was finally starting to heal. So what now? Jennifer asked eventually. Tyler looked at me, then at his mother. Now we figure out how to do this together. By day 4, we'd established a rhythm that surprised everyone, including the nursing staff. Jennifer had extended her stay indefinitely, something that involved heated phone calls with a business partner and a lot of rearranging of client meetings. Tyler had transformed the corner of my room into a makeshift study space, with textbooks stacked on the windowsill and his laptop balanced on his knees as he attended virtual lectures. And I was still alive, which seemed to surprise Dr. Martinez more each day. Your numbers are stabilizing, he told me during his morning rounds, studying my chart with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle. I'm not saying we're out of the woods, but you're responding better to treatment than we initially expected. Tyler looked up from his anatomy textbook, hope flickering in his eyes. Does that mean? It means we take it one day at a time, Dr. Martinez said gently. But having a strong support system certainly isn't hurting. After he left, Jennifer approached my bed with 2 cups of coffee and the expression she'd worn as a child when she was about to confess to breaking something. Mom, I need to tell you something. Tyler glanced up from his laptop, sensing the shift in mood. I haven't been a good daughter, Jennifer continued, settling into her chair. Not for a long time. After Dad died, after the divorce, after everything fell apart, I convinced myself that staying away was protecting you from my mess. But really, I think I was protecting myself from having to deal with losing anyone else. I reached for her hand. Jennifer. Let me finish, please. She took a shaky breath. Tyler was right the other day. I abandoned him when he needed me most, and you stepped in without question. You raised him while I was too busy running from my problems to see what I was doing to the people I loved most. Tyler closed his laptop and moved closer to us. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Jennifer looked at her son with eyes full of regret. I owe you both an apology. A big one. And I need you to know that watching Tyler choose to stay here, watching him love you the way he does. It's shown me what real loyalty looks like. What real love looks like. The emotion in her voice made my chest tight. We all made choices, sweetheart. Some good, some not so good. What matters is what we do now. What I want to do now, Jennifer said, is be here. Really be here. For both of you. That afternoon, Jennifer surprised me by producing a deck of cards from her purse. Remember how we used to play gin rummy when I was little? She asked. Every Sunday after dinner? I smiled at the memory. You used to cheat. I did not cheat. I was strategically creative. Tyler laughed from his chair. That sounds like cheating to me. Don't side with her, young man. I taught you how to play poker. And just like that, the three of us were playing cards in my hospital room, trash-talking each other and laughing like we hadn't in years. Jennifer had gotten rusty. She kept trying to discard cards she needed, but Tyler was ruthless, winning hand after hand with a poker face that would have made his grandfather proud. Where did you learn to play like that? Jennifer demanded after losing her fourth straight hand. Grandma taught me, Tyler said with a grin. Every Sunday when I was in high school. She said it would help me in life. She was right, I said. Poker teaches you to read people, to know when to hold your cards and when to fold. And when to bluff, Tyler added, raising an eyebrow at his mother. As the days blended together, I started to notice things. The way Jennifer would absently stroke my hair while we watched the news, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. The way Tyler would wake up in his chair every few hours throughout the night to check on me, adjusting my blanket or refilling my water cup. The way they were starting to talk to each other again, really talk, instead of dancing around years of hurt feelings. On day 7, Nancy the nurse found Tyler in the hallway at 2 a.m, pacing and talking on his phone in whispers. Everything okay, honey? She asked when he hung up. Just talking to my girlfriend, Tyler said. Amy. She's back at Georgetown, worried about me. Ah. Nancy nodded knowingly. Long-distance relationships are hard under normal circumstances. This must be especially difficult. Tyler was quiet for a moment. She doesn't understand why I can't just visit on weekends. She thinks I'm being dramatic. And what do you think? I think some people don't understand what it means to have someone who would do anything for you. Tyler looked through the doorway at me, sleeping in my hospital bed. Amy's a good person, but she's never had to depend on anyone the way I depended on my grandmother. She doesn't get that this isn't about obligation or guilt. It's about love. Nancy patted his shoulder. The right person will understand. And if she doesn't, well, maybe she's not the right person. I pretended to be asleep, but Tyler's words stayed with me long after he'd settled back into his chair. He was sacrificing more than just his education to be here. He was potentially sacrificing his relationship, his social life, his entire college experience. And he was doing it without complaint, without resentment, with nothing but love. Day 9 brought unexpected visitors. Mrs. Patterson from next door arrived with a plate of cookies and updates on Whiskers, who was apparently thriving in her absence. My former neighbor from 3 houses down brought flowers and stayed for an hour, telling me about her grandchildren and asking Tyler about his studies. I always knew that boy was special, she told Jennifer while Tyler was down the hall getting ice. The way he used to help your mother with her yard work, never asking for anything in return. You raised a good one. Jennifer glanced at me across the room. Actually, Mom raised him. I just provided the raw material. Well, whoever did the raising, they did it right. That evening, after our visitors had gone and the hospital had settled into its nighttime quiet, Tyler was studying at his makeshift desk when I noticed he kept rubbing his neck and rolling his shoulders. That chair is killing you, I observed. I'm fine, he said automatically, the same response he'd been giving to everyone who expressed concern about his sleeping arrangements. Tyler James Morrison, I changed your diapers. I know when you're lying. He looked up with a rueful smile. Okay, maybe it's not the most comfortable setup. But I've had worse. When? Remember that time you drove me to the state soccer tournament in Des Moines? We couldn't afford a hotel, so we slept in the car. I remembered. Tyler had been 16, playing for the regional championship that would determine whether his team advanced to state. We'd driven 3 hours in my ancient Honda, packed sandwiches and a cooler full of Gatorade, and when the game ran late and all the affordable hotels were booked, we'd reclined the front seats and made the best of it. You didn't complain then either, I said softly. Why would I? You were there. That's all that mattered. Jennifer looked up from her magazine. You two have a lot of memories I'm not part of. There was sadness in her voice, but not the bitter resentment I might have expected. Tyler looked at his mother for a long moment. We could make new ones, he said quietly. The three of us. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. I'd like that. As day 9 turned into day 10, I found myself thinking not about dying, but about living. About the second chance I'd been given to watch my grandson become a man, to reconcile with my daughter, to see our broken family start to heal. The heart monitor beside my bed continued its steady rhythm, counting out the beats of a life that suddenly felt far from over. Day 12 dawned gray and drizzling, the kind of Iowa weather that seeps into your bones and makes everything feel heavier. I'd been awake since 4, watching Tyler sleep in his chair, his textbook still open on his lap and his glasses slightly askew. In 12 days, that uncomfortable hospital chair had become his world, and he'd never once complained. Jennifer stirred in the cot the nurses had finally allowed her to bring in, opening her eyes and immediately looking toward my bed to check on me. It had become her routine: sleep fitfully, wake up, verify I was still breathing, try to sleep again. The circles under her eyes told the story of someone who'd spent nearly 2 weeks expecting the worst. "Morning, Mom," she whispered, careful not to wake Tyler. "Morning, sweetheart." She sat up, running her hands through her hair. "How are you feeling?" It was a question they'd both asked me dozens of times over the past 12 days, and I'd given them variations of the same answer. Tired, okay, hanging in there. But this morning felt different somehow. Clearer. Better, I said, and meant it. Dr. Martinez arrived for his morning rounds earlier than usual, and I could tell immediately that something had changed. He spent longer than normal studying my chart, checking and rechecking the readouts from the machines that had been monitoring my heart's every beat. Tyler woke up as the doctor was finishing his examination, instantly alert in the way that comes from days of hypervigilance. "How is she?" Tyler asked, struggling to unfold himself from the chair. Dr. Martinez looked at all three of us, and for the first time since this ordeal began, he was smiling. "She's remarkable. Her cardiac function has improved significantly over the past few days. The medications are working better than we hoped, and her overall stability is, well, it's not what we typically see in cases like this." "What does that mean?" Jennifer asked, afraid to hope. "It means," Dr. Martinez said carefully, "that while we're not talking about a complete recovery, we're also not talking about weeks or months. Mrs. Thompson's condition has stabilized to the point where we can start discussing long-term management rather than just crisis intervention." The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler sank back into his chair, looking like someone had just told him he'd won the lottery. Jennifer started crying, not the quiet tears we'd all become accustomed to, but deep, relieved sobs that came from a place of pure gratitude. "Are you saying she's going to be okay?" Tyler asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying she's going to have more time than we initially thought. Quality time, if she follows her treatment plan and makes some lifestyle changes." Dr. Martinez looked directly at me. "You have a very determined support system, Mrs. Thompson. That's made all the difference." After he left, the three of us sat in stunned silence, processing the news that changed everything. Tyler was the first to speak. "I guess I should probably call Georgetown," he said with a shaky laugh. "Let them know I'll be back sooner than expected." Something in his tone made me look at him more closely. "Tyler, what's wrong?" He shook his head. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. It's just," he paused, struggling to find the words. I've spent the last 12 days preparing to lose you, and now I get to figure out how to live without that fear." Jennifer reached over and took his hand. "We all do." That afternoon, as I was finally strong enough to sit up in a real chair by the window, Tyler received a call from Georgetown. I watched his face as he talked to what sounded like an academic advisor, explaining his situation and discussing his options for the remainder of the semester. "Yes, sir, I understand the importance of not falling behind," he was saying. "But I also understand the importance of family. No, sir, I don't regret my decision, actually. It's taught me more about what kind of doctor I want to be than any textbook could." When he hung up, Jennifer looked at him questioningly. "They're letting me complete the semester remotely," Tyler said. "I can take my finals online and be back on campus in January." "And your girlfriend?" I asked gently. Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Amy and I broke up yesterday. She said she couldn't be with someone who would throw away his future for a sick old woman." He looked at me with a sad smile. "I told her she was right. I couldn't be with someone who would call my grandmother a sick old woman." Jennifer squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry, honey. Don't be. Nancy was right if she couldn't understand this. She wasn't the right person anyway." That evening, as the hospital settled into its familiar nighttime rhythm, Tyler was packing up his textbooks when I finally asked the question that had been weighing on me all day. "Tyler, why did you really stay?" He looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're 18 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you, friends at college, opportunities one couldn't even dream of when I was your age. You could have visited on weekends, called every day, and no one would have blamed you for living your life. So why did you sleep in that uncomfortable chair for 12 nights?" Tyler set down his book and came to sit beside me. "Do you remember when I was 10 and I broke my arm falling out of the tree in your backyard?" I nodded. It had been a bad break, requiring surgery and weeks in a cast. "You stayed with me in the hospital that night, even though Mom was there. You slept in one of these awful chairs because you knew I was scared and you wanted me to know I wasn't alone." Tyler's eyes were bright with emotion. "You did that for me when I was 10 years old and scared. How could I do any less for you when you were scared and facing something so much worse? That's different. You were a child." "No, Grandma. That's exactly the same. Love doesn't have an expiration date. Care doesn't come with conditions." He took my hand in both of his. "You taught me that. Every day you chose to put my needs before your own comfort. Every time you drove to my games or helped with my homework or just listened when I needed to talk, you were teaching me what real love looks like." I was crying now, tears of gratitude and pride and overwhelming love for this remarkable young man who'd somehow grown up when I wasn't looking. "You stayed because you love me," I said softly. "I stayed because you raised me to understand that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day. And choosing to be here, choosing to make sure you weren't alone during the scariest time of your life, was the easiest choice I've ever made." Jennifer wiped tears from her eyes. "He's right, Mom. I spent so many years thinking love was about big gestures or perfect moments, but watching Tyler these past 12 days, he's shown me that love is about showing up. Just showing up, day after day, even when it's hard." As the three of us sat together in that hospital room, surrounded by the evidence of 12 days of choosing love over convenience, I realized that maybe Dr. Martinez was wrong about one thing. This wasn't about my condition stabilizing or my heart getting stronger. This was about discovering that love, real, unconditional, sacrificial love, has a power that goes beyond medicine. It has the power to heal relationships, to change perspectives, to transform ordinary moments into something extraordinary. Tyler would go back to Georgetown in January, and he'd become the kind of doctor who understands that healing involves more than just treating symptoms. Jennifer would return to Phoenix, but with a renewed commitment to being present in the lives of the people she loved. And I would go home to my little house in Cedar Falls, to my tomato garden and my quiet routines, but with the knowledge that I wasn't alone. Because sometimes, when you're lucky enough to love someone and be loved in return, 12 days in a hospital chair can teach you everything you need to know about what really matters in life. Tyler moved his chair one more time, positioning it so he could hold my hand while I slept. Just in case you have any nightmares, he said with a smile. Just like when he was 10 years old and afraid of the dark. Some things, I realized, never change. And some things, the most important things, should never change at all. Love doesn't come with an expiration date. And neither, apparently, did I.